Not all callings are made with sound. Some echo through absolute silence, not touching the ears but seeping into the bloodstream. They do not come from this world, but rise from a deeper dimension, more ancient, where memory exists without the need for language. Such callings often find us in dreams, in the moments when logic fades and the soul, like a receiver, tunes into echoes long buried beneath the layers of time. You wake up heart racing without knowing why. A fleeting image, a spiral staircase of stone moss-covered descending into a tomb-like stillness. A sound wordless, tuneless, yet it makes you weep with a pain that feels strangely familiar. These things are not imagination. They do not come from the subconscious, but from memories that have never been awakened. At the bottom of the ocean, where sunlight has never touched, lies a stratum of memory sealed not by concrete, stone, or metal, but by waves of vibration. And from there Atlantis whispers, not as a sunken city, but as a sleeping being, still breathing, still humming gently whenever a soul of resonance draws near. Those who dream of Atlantis are not dreamers. They are the ones reopening a door that was closed tens of thousands of years ago. They are living proof that Atlantis never disappeared. It simply waits to be remembered. And if you are reading these words, if your heart has ever skipped a beat upon seeing an ancient symbol, if you have ever stood silently before the sea with tears falling, and no reason, why then perhaps you are not hearing a story. You are resonating with a calling that has been waiting for you since a previous lifetime. You do not need to believe. You do not need to understand. You do not need to prove. You only need to feel. Because a calling does not need to be explained. It only needs to be recognized. And if you have begun to feel it, then welcome back. Atlantis is waiting for you, not in geography, but in the layer of memory that is beginning to open from deep within you. Atlantis was not destroyed. That is the first thing you must unlearn from the rubble of what history has told. It did not collapse due to natural disasters, nor did it sink as punishment for moral failure, as so many sanitized myths have proclaimed. Atlantis was sealed. Like an ancient code, the city did not vanish. It slipped out of the physical dimension, falling into a vibrational layer that modern humanity can no longer touch. Like frequencies of sound beyond the human ear, Atlantis still hums, still exists, but can only be perceived by the soul. And the most terrifying truth is not that Atlantis once existed, but what Atlantis preserved. Not gold, not technology, but something far more dangerous than any weapon: the frequency of primordial memory. A Genesis code. A sound woven into the very structure of the cosmos, capable of awakening every dormant potential within humanity. What we call awakening is in truth a resonance with that frequency. And the moment a single soul hears it, the memory of the universe stirs, rising like a flood through all the barriers the system has erected over millennia. Enki, bringer of light from the Abzu, the one who once reignited the DNA of humanity, he was the one who planted that frequency within Atlantis. But he did not carve it into stone. He did not store it in a library. He wove his very voice, the most primal vibration of a god, into the living materials that shaped the city. Each concentric circle, each pillar of stone, every stream flowing around the temples, they were all echoes of a wordless symphony. This was what Enki left behind, not knowledge, but a calling encoded into space. Not everyone can hear that voice, but those who do never return as the person they were, because they now know without learning. They remember without needing proof. A transformation begins from within. Dreams change, the eyes grow deeper, and a strange sensation arises, as if living in two realities at once, the physical present and an ancient memory realm reawakening through each cell. And because of this, Atlantis is not merely a buried city. It is a mechanism of memory locking, a soundbox sealed by other gods, those who feared the return of a free humanity. Enlil and the High Councils could not destroy Atlantis because it was built from frequency, not matter. So instead, they distorted the memory. They constructed myths of warning that Atlantis was a symbol of arrogance, of downfall, of sin. But they were the ones who feared that one day humanity's children would remember who they truly were. You see, history did not forget Atlantis. It was simply rewritten. And now, as the waves begin to vibrate once more, as more and more people feel that they know something that no one ever taught them, this is not coincidence. It is the signal that the symphony is beginning to vibrate again. The fragments of memory, long asleep for tens of thousands of years, are rising from their deep slumber beneath the waves. If you've ever felt different, if you've ever gazed into the ocean and felt something familiar calling from below, if you've ever stood in silence before a stone circle or a spiral symbol, and your heart skipped a beat, then perhaps you've begun to hear the voice buried within Atlantis. And if you truly hear it, then you are no longer an ordinary human. Plato was not merely a philosopher, not just a theoretician building worlds from logic and geometry. He was the last bearer of a remnant, a memory that did not belong to time. When he spoke of Atlantis in Timaeus and Critias, it was not to illustrate moral decay, nor to present an ideal political model. It was a whisper, a sequence of sound veiled in philosophy, like an ancient chant that hides its soul in the silences between words. What Plato described of Atlantis, the ringed city, the glowing central temple, the concentric waterways, the walls coated in mysterious alloys, was the description of a massive resonance circuit. Not physical architecture, but a design of frequency. He claimed he did not invent the story, but merely retold what was passed down through generations from ancient Egypt. But why did Plato remember, and why out of thousands of ancient texts was he the only one who spoke of Atlantis in such vivid detail as if he had once walked upon the city's wet stone? The answer does not lie in philosophy, but in the frequency of memory. Perhaps Plato did not learn of Atlantis. Perhaps he remembered it. An ancient echo rising from beneath the framework of thought from a place logic cannot reach, but where the soul still holds the image. And what he left behind was not a moral tale. It was a wave map, a map that cannot be solved with compass or ruler. It only takes form when seen through the eyes of memory, when you stop reading words and begin to feel the vibrations hidden in each symbol. Plato called Atlantis an ideal city, but those who understand the deeper layers know ideal here is not about social justice, but about resonance, the alignment of human frequency with that of the cosmos. Atlantis was a place where physical structure resonated directly with spiritual design. Every shape, every light, every stream of water, every instrument and language all operated as part of a living energy system designed to activate higher levels of awakening. When Plato wrote of the concentric rings, he was describing a spiral of awakening, an architecture that could reignite layers of memory locked away since the time of the Great Flood. And at the city's center, what he called the Temple of Poseidon, glowing with radiant light, was in truth the place where Enki infused the final me into the living stone. Plato did not name Enki, but he spoke of an ancient god who loved mankind and lived among them. That was not a metaphor. That was a trace, a leftover imprint of an event erased from recorded history. The passages Plato wrote were not just text, they were sonic keys. When a reader begins to resonate with those descriptions, it means the layer of memory is beginning to respond, a silent activation. And if something in Plato's words made you pause, if an image flashed in your mind that you could not explain, then you were not reading philosophy. You were decoding an ancient frequency that he intentionally wove into language. And perhaps that is why he was forgotten in this aspect. They teach Plato as the father of rational thought, but they ignore that he was also the last to leave behind a mystical key hidden in sacred geometry. Atlantis, in his words, was not a dream. It was a path home. Plato was not a storyteller. He was the final relay station. The last echo before Atlantis sank fully into silence. And he left behind in this world a string of vibrations, a resonant code recognizable only by those who carry the matching frequency. You do not need to explain it. You only need to feel it. And if your heart has ever skipped a beat upon hearing the name Atlantis, then perhaps you are a piece of the map he left behind. Atlantis was never meant to be seen. It was meant to be heard. Felt through the deepest layer of the soul where physical senses become meaningless. Unlike any civilization that ever existed from the pyramids to Machu Picchu, Atlantis was not built by hand, but through living frequencies. Every stone was a resonance, every curve a silent melody, and the entire city functioned as a quantum sound machine to activate, to heal, and if necessary, to awaken. The circles of Atlantis were not aesthetic design. They were standing waves, a physical phenomenon where vibrating energy forms stable points of resonance. In ancient physics, it was the phenomenon of sound. In Atlantis, it was the phenomenon of living memory. To walk those circles was to step between layers of consciousness. The deeper you went, the sound changed not through the ears, but through the blood, the heartbeat, and the very currents of your dreams. And at the center was that which no one dared name, a colossal me, not a crystal, but the vibrating heart of the city. Legends tell of this object emitting a sound that no one could understand, no one could record yet, Upon hearing it, one would feel as though they had known everything and lost everything in a single breath. It was not a sound of this world, but the language of the gods, a vibration that could only sing when a soul of matching frequency approached the epicenter. The Atlanteans called it the moment without return. Those who entered unprepared would forever lose their former self. Never again would they walk this world with the same eyes. For once you hear that sound, you are no longer a person. You become a vibration, an extension of cosmic memory. And because of this, the central ME of Atlantis was not just an artifact, it was a living protocol, a resonant code left by Enki, not to be found, but to be felt at the right moment. When ancient civilizations learned to build stone temples, to draw sacred geometry, to craft visual languages, they were only imitating Atlantis. But none could replicate the vibrating heart, because that original frequency is unique, encoded by Enki's divine voice, unreplicable, unforgettable. Some texts describe moments of sudden possession when someone wandering amidst old stone ruins suddenly felt their body being overtaken, their heart beating to an unfamiliar rhythm, their eyes seeing symbols they had never learned. These people were not mad. They were shards of Atlantis reconnecting with the source frequency. When close enough, memory activates not through language but through vibration, and that is the sign the ME is still active. The real question is not where is Atlantis, but are you resonating with it? Enki did not design Atlantis as a city to inhabit. He designed it as a broadcast station of memory beyond the reach of divine control and time, a place where souls seated with ancient frequencies could return, stand within the sound circles, and hear again what was once part of them. But if you are not ready, if you come seeking only power, knowledge, or proof, the sound will not sing for you. Or worse, it will sing and shatter every old structure inside you, leaving behind a hollow soul screaming from remembering what it never learned. There are languages you do not need to study, you only need to remember. There are sounds not meant for ears, but for the deepest layer of the soul. Atlantis was never built to endure, it was built to awaken. And if your heartbeat begins to slow while reading these words, then perhaps the ME is calling you with the very frequency that once was you. The Atlanteans tell that before the city resonated for the final time, a visitor arrived from the east. No one knew his name. No one knew the land he came from. They only knew he entered with the silence of an undertow and the stillness of a dimension of memory long forgotten. His skin was dark, like a moonless ocean night. His eyes blue, but not like the sky, like a memory that had never been named. They called him the Nameless One. But to those who still remember the ancient waves, we know clearly he was Enki. He had no entourage, no chariots. He carried no symbols of power or titles. He did not enter Atlantis as a god demanding worship, but as a familiar frequency rising from the deep and merging into the current of the land. In his hand was a device emitting spiral light, constantly rotating, mimicking the motion of galaxies, or more precisely the symbol of the ME, the sigil of oscillating wisdom. When he walked into the center of the city, no one stopped him. No one understood yet. No one doubted. Atlantis, with all its knowledge and technology, seemed to have been waiting for this moment for a very long time. He did not speak. He issued no commands. He simply placed his hand on the resonance core, a glowing stone platform, breathing in sync with the city itself. And in that instant, a new frequency began to vibrate. Not loud, not piercing, but immediately the entire city responded. The streets changed their glow. The water in the spiral canals began to hum. Above, though the skies were clear, concentric rings of light appeared as though the city and the cosmos had just reconnected through an ancient channel long sealed. No one could explain what was happening, but every inhabitant of Atlantis felt the same thing. A part of them had just awakened, a layer of memory, a current of vibration, something they never knew existed, suddenly surged up from their blood, their breath, their very gaze. And the most terrifying truth was, no one wanted it to stop. Enki gave no decree. He did not come to teach or to lead. He came only to activate. Like one who touches the frozen tree of life and with a single contact revives the system. And as the city began to respond to the new tone, something indescribable spread, a longing for something never learned yet strangely remembered. The more sensitive ones began to dream. They saw corridors of light. They saw symbols hovering in the air. They saw glyphs they could not read, and yet they understood. Some, standing near the central ME, no longer wished to return to who they once were. They felt the person they had been was only a shell. and what was rising within them was the memory of a species never recorded by history. Enki did not stay long. After touching the heart of the city and leaving his final frequency behind, he departed. No farewell, no further teachings, because he knew Atlantis had received it, and what had been activated could not be undone. Once the ME resonates, it continues to vibrate in the stones in the waters, and in the blood of those who carry the matching frequency. Enki's presence was never carved into tablets, never written in books, but legend whispers across generations that after that moment Atlantis ceased to be a city and became a resonance gate, a transmission station for cosmic memory, and that if anyone with the right vibration were to step into the center of the resonance ring, the ME would sing again. And when that happens, when someone unknown touches the central point as Enki once did, Atlantis will rise, not from the sea floor, but from the layer of memory now sleeping within you. The ME is not merely an object, it is a state of vibration, a living crystal that holds the primordial frequency of the universe. A stream of oscillating codes through which consciousness can be formed, memory recorded without symbols, and the soul directly connected to the origin layer. In the early ages of Sumer, Enki safeguarded dozens of ME tablets within ancient temples, glowing stone slabs, devices emitting ultrasonic frequencies, only perceivable when you are no longer bound by the constraints of modern humanity. But among them all, there was one final ME unlike any that came before. It did not emit light. It did not sing through instruments. It was never meant to be used but to be activated. No one could record it. No one could replicate it. Because it was not made, it was extracted from the core vibration of Enki himself, from the deepest strata of sacred memory. And because of that, it was not meant for everyone. Only those souls who resonated at the right frequency, those who carried ancient memory in their blood, could ever hear it hum. Enki did not hide the final ME in a Sumerian temple, nor did he entrust it to the councils of the gods. Instead, he brought it to Atlantis, but not to be worshipped, not to be studied. He fused it into the living stone matrix of the city, as if transforming the entire city into a colossal resonance device. When the Atlanteans walked between the stone circles, they didn't realize they were moving inside a breathing entity, a living construct programmed with activation frequency. The final ME needed no guardian. Its frequency was its biological lock. It did not exist as a visible object, but as a hidden vibration embedded in space, only released when someone of matching resonance arrived. But when it did hum, the entire structure of reality began to shift. Memory surged backward through time to epochs before fear programmed humanity, before language fragmented them, before they were severed from origin. And that is what made the other gods afraid. Enlil and the forces that sought to maintain a low-frequency order saw the final ME not as a weapon, but as a threat far greater, a power of reconstruction. It did not control, it decoded, it did not rule, it unlocked. And in a world built upon forgetting, nothing is more terrifying than true remembrance. For once, a soul begins to activate, it no longer conforms to the old systems. It no longer obeys rituals of worship, fears divine punishment, or submits to the will of gods. It will know itself. It will remember that it was once part of the original design. And in that moment, the fabricated gods will lose their power. Enki never needed to confront them. He only needed to leave a sleeping voice within the heart of the city. And when the time is ripe, when enough resonant souls return to the right frequency, the final ME will hum again like a bell, awakening the memory of the cosmos. But this does not come through effort, not through research, not through machines. It comes in stillness. In the moment you gaze upon a stone circle and your heart skips its rhythm. When you hear a sound no one else hears. When you feel, without understanding, that you've always known this. If you've ever had such a moment, then the ME may have already begun resonating within you. And once it begins to hum, you will not be able to stop. Because memory never dies, it only waits to vibrate in the right rhythm to be reborn. Because Atlantis was never just a city. It was a structure of interference, a place where matter and spirit, sacred geometry, and cosmic rhythm intertwined. Atlantis was a gate not to reach somewhere else, but to return to a forgotten level of consciousness. Since the dawn of time, before humanity had fractured into separate forms, there existed lands where people did not need words to understand each other, where they needed no temples to meet the divine. And Atlantis was the last place on Earth to preserve that frequency, Their people did not merely gaze at the stars, they resonated with the heavens. They didn't decode DNA, they sang in light codes communicating with the strands themselves. They didn't study the cosmos through observation, they became part of it. There was no line between the outer and the inner. Consciousness operated as an open system synchronized between living energy and the breath of the planet. Enki, the bringer of life's frequency from the Abzu, saw this. He didn't choose Atlantis for power, but because its structure was strong enough to preserve living memory. When the divine councils decreed that human memory must be erased after the Great Deluge, Enki did not react with violence. He chose something deeper to plant memory into the realm that could not be swept away, not on tablets, not in language, but in vibration. And Atlantis became the last intact broadcast station, the only place synchronized enough not only to contain the final ME, but to amplify it. Enki knew that after the massive purification, everything from the Golden Age would be wiped from physical form. But if there could be one place where frequency was encoded directly into stone, into light, into water, then memory would not die. It would merely wait to resonate again. But that act was a silent rebellion, a refusal to submit to the orders of the other gods. Enki did not merely disrupt the process, he shattered the absolute power of forgetting. And in a universe governed by order, any act that sows freedom is the gravest sin. The gods could not destroy Atlantis because they could not destroy what they could not understand. Atlantis could not be burned, buried, or erased. It was a living spiritual protocol protected by the very fabric of the cosmos. So they chose the only option left: sealing. The entire city was smothered with phase-shifted waves. Not seismic waves, but vibrational dissonance oscillations that broke the synchronization between Atlantis and Earth's consciousness field. In a blink, Atlantis slipped out of this reality. No explosion, no collapse, just disappearance. As if it had never existed, or rather as if it had withdrawn into the original dimension reachable only to those souls encoded with resonant memory. The price for protecting memory was for Atlantis to leave the world. And Enki, the god of life, the sower of freedom through vibration, was erased from the pantheon. No one spoke of him. No one worshipped him. But those who feel still hear his frequency hum in dreams and callings that make no sound. And like a heartbeat sunken beneath deep waters, Atlantis still pulses, still waits. Not to be found by maps, but to be activated by a soul at the right moment. Because Enki did not build a city to dwell in. He built an eternal gate, the only place that can lead humanity back to its origin. If the very name Atlantis gives you goosebumps, if the spiral symbol feels like something you've seen in a life long past, then perhaps you are not just remembering Atlantis. Perhaps Atlantis is remembering you. Enlil, the god of order, guardian of the cosmic structure decreed by the Anunnaki Council, never forgave Enki's silence. No declaration, no rebellion, just a single quiet act planting memory into the most sacred place on Earth, Atlantis. And to Enlil, that was not merely disobedience, it was a sacred betrayal. For in his eyes, memory is the most dangerous vibration. No prison can contain a soul that has remembered who it truly is. The Anunnaki Council beings who exist on higher spatial planes where thought takes shape, where sound becomes command, had seen what Enki was preparing: a vibrational ecosystem strong enough to reawaken humanity, not through weapons, not through knowledge, but through resonance. If one day someone were to hear the final ME vibrate, then the gods' dominion would end. Humans would remember they were once co-creators, not lesser beings. They would stop praying. They would stop worshiping. They would awaken themselves. And that was something that could never be allowed. The gods did not strike with swords, for Enki had raised no army. They did not destroy the city, for Atlantis did not exist through matter alone. What they needed was an attack on its frequency. They summoned a type of wave unknown to modern man, a decoding vibration. A wave that didn't destroy the city, but shifted its entire resonance. Like playing a single wrong note in a perfect symphony, the disharmony spread, pushing all frequencies out of alignment. And when that wave was cast, not from a machine, but from the higher realms themselves, Atlantis began to slide out of reality. No explosion, no collapse, just disappearance. Like a record pulled from a system, like a dream cut off mid-breath. In that instant, Atlantis no longer belonged to Earth but hadn't fully joined another realm either. It was sealed in an interference layer, a zone that only souls resonating with Enki's frequency could access. Enki did not fight, he did not resist, he simply let it be, because he knew vibration cannot be destroyed, it can only sleep, and what is planted in living frequency can never be smothered by fear. He withdrew like a voice fading from space, but the echo remained. The people of Atlantis vanished with their city. No one knows if they died, or were rerouted to another realm where they would wait until the final ME vibrated once more. Enlil and the council believed they had won, that Atlantis had been sealed. But they forgot one thing: Enki did not hide the ME in an object. He hid it in the blood, in dreams, in the eyes of children born with heartbeats out of rhythm with this world. And it is these people who may not even know who they are who will become the extended hands to decode the forbidden vibration. The decoding wave only affects what lies outside of humanity. But sacred memory was encoded into the soul. Atlantis did not die. It was only hidden from the perception of those not yet ready. And now, as dreams of the sunken city return, as spiral lights appear in meditation, as wordless callings echo in the hearts of those who do not belong to this world, this is the sign the seal is weakening. The ME is about to hum again. And once it does, no vibration can stop memory from returning. The disappearance of Atlantis did not unfold as a catastrophe. There was no fire, no thunderous explosion, no grand image of towering waves swallowing the city as the myths often proclaim. Atlantis was not destroyed. It slipped away like a vibration falling out of tune with the music of reality. The entire city, its concentric architecture, its central ME, its living resonance was compressed into another layer of space where light no longer reflects as we know it, and water no longer holds the form of oceans, but becomes a medium for storing frequency. Atlantis was pushed to the fringes of perception. It does not exist somewhere on a map. It did not sink beneath the sea in a physical sense. It now resides between two waveforms, between light and water, between memory and the present. A place unreachable by technology, undetectable by radar, untraceable even by the most advanced ships because it does not dwell in three-dimensional space. It resides in a field of shifted vibration where ordinary laws bend under the weight of the ancient memory it holds. For ages, people have searched for Atlantis with compasses, satellites, logic. But that was their first mistake. Atlantis cannot be discovered. It can only be felt, and only by those who have once resonated with it, those who carry remnants of the sacred frequency, those whose blood responds to spiral light, those who cannot explain why an ancient symbol moves them to tears. And so Atlantis begins to return not through physical appearance but through the echoes of memory. A dream repeating itself. You stand before a spiral-shaped door. A soft light flows along the stone's edge. Your hand touches the cold surface of a symbol with no name. You feel as if you're about to remember something immense, something never taught, yet always present within you, like an original template cloaked in shadow. And then, you wake up. It's gone. Only the aftershock of a question remains. Why do I know this? These dream doors don't lead to another world. They lead back to yourself. To the part of your soul that once lived there, that once heard languageless sounds, that once walked the stone rings pulsing with healing frequencies. Atlantis is not just a city, it is a resonant blueprint woven from light, water, and memory. And when it slipped from this reality, it didn't vanish. It simply hid itself, waiting for the right frequency to emerge again. The sealing was not merely a means to hide. It was a mechanism to protect memory. The gods knew if Atlantis still existed on the surface, then one day humanity would find it. But if it was placed outside of time, if it only responded to resonant souls, then no one could break it except those who carry the awakening code. Enki did not hide Atlantis from the world. He hid the world from Atlantis so that only those truly ready could touch that ancient layer of memory. And now those people are beginning to appear. Children dreaming the same dream. Meditators hearing the same tone. Eyes that linger too long on a spiral they've never seen before, not because they know, but because memory within them is beginning to hum again. Atlantis was not forgotten. It is slowly remembering those who once belonged to it. And if you've ever had a moment like that, if you've ever woken from a dream feeling like you've returned from a place that doesn't exist, then know this: it is not imagination, it is vibrational feedback. It is the sign that Atlantis has begun to stir within you. And when you are awake enough not to dismiss it, the spiral door will no longer remain a dream. It will take form in the way you see the world. After Atlantis disappeared, a deep silence descended upon humanity. No more sounds echoing from breathing stones. No more spiral light casting visions into the mind. And slowly the gods began to weave a different story, a legend implanted like a spiritual anesthetic that Atlantis was punished for its arrogance, that it defied divine laws, that forbidden knowledge led to the drowning of an entire civilization. The tale was rewritten in a moralistic tone full of warnings not to enlighten but to obscure the truth, because that truth is more dangerous than any weapon. They did not fear the city. They feared the structure of memory encoded within Atlantis. They did not fear Enki as a rebellious god. They feared that one day humanity would understand Enki did not rebel. He revealed. He didn't break divine laws. He touched the deeper law where freedom is not granted but is the inherent nature of every soul. But to preserve order, to keep the veil of forgetting from tearing open, the gods had to reconstruct history. They burned texts, erased names, and dismantled all symbols tied to the ancient frequencies. Enki, who once summoned the waters, bestowed knowledge, and embedded divine DNA, was reduced to a shadow in distorted myths. No longer called a creator, no longer sung in ritual, he became the forgotten, eclipsed by those in power. But there was one thing the gods did not foresee: vibration does not die. What is sown through frequency does not need to be written on tablets or stored in libraries. It lives in resonance, in heartbeats, in glances, in the nameless sorrow of those who carry the awakening code. These people need no books to know, no teachers to feel. They simply stand before an ancient symbol and their whole being trembles, not out of understanding, but because memory has begun to sing again. And from these rhythm walkers, the sound of Atlantis never truly falls silent. A faint tone fractured echoes in dreams. A wordless call rising in moments of stillness. A flash of memory when hearing a strange string of sounds, when seeing a spiral etched into stone, or when touching the ocean's surface and the heart suddenly clenches. These responses are not coincidences. They are Atlantis sending waves back into the world. And with every awakened soul, the legend rewritten by the gods begins to erode, because no myth can extinguish the uprising of living memory. No moral illusion can withstand a truth that vibrates from the depths of blood. The gods may rule through fear, but they cannot stop a soul from beginning to remember. They made humanity fear knowledge, fear awakening. They stamped every trace of ancient frequency with the label of heresy. Then they convinced the world that wisdom leads to downfall. But the truth is, this fear is the most powerful tool of control. And now, as the ancient rhythm stirs, as souls across the earth begin to resynchronize, as the symbol of Atlantis is no longer dismissed as fiction, the door sealed by millennia of lies begins to crack. Enki does not need to be remembered by words. He is remembered by frequency. And when even one person vibrates in alignment, that sound spreads like a fracture in frozen glass, shattering every seal ever built on fear. If you've ever felt that you knew something no one ever taught you, if your heart has ever slowed upon seeing an ancient symbol, then perhaps you are not just remembering a myth, you are being activated. And that call, no matter how deeply buried, has never gone silent. More and more people are dreaming of a nameless city, a place where stone is not just matter, but heartbeat, where water doesn't simply flow, but sings. No one taught them these things. They never read Plato. They never studied the history of Atlantis. But they know not through intellect, but through something deeper than thought, cellular memory. These dreams are not ordinary. They repeat. They start at the same point. They carry the same rhythm, a frequency that aligns without intent. Stone circles, spiral towers, corridors of light, and a voice soft as breath echoing from a place beyond words. Under hypnosis, they all say the same thing. I walked through a door that doesn't open by hand. I heard music like water flowing through air. I saw symbols hovering in space. I knew. I had been there before. These testimonies are not guided, not imagined, not manipulated. They erupt like a truth forced to surface once all the control layers have been peeled away, and the scientists, those fluent in the frameworks of physics, begin to lose their footing. How could people from different cultures who've never met describe the same imagery, the same experience? How can memories of vibrational technology, spatial architecture, and energy glyphs exist in those who've never encountered a single related source? The answer does not lie in psychology. It lies in DNA. Because Enki did not only encode memory into stone, into structures, into sonic waves, he embedded it in the blood. The spirals within human genetic structure carry more than biological information, they carry living frequencies. A memory layer untethered from time, unwiped by flood, undistorted by language. It waits silent like a melody, longing for the right instrument to be played again. And when the final ME begins to echo across dimensions, when phase distortion starts recalibrating to the original rhythm, souls carrying the resonant code begin to respond. Not all. Only those with the inner ear open. Only those misaligned from the programming of this world. They begin to see things differently. They see symbols where others see stone. They hear music in silence. They feel something move behind the light, beneath the words, beneath sleep. No one can explain it, but deep down they know something is rising inside them, not delusion, but an ancient layer of awareness once sealed away. And when they find one another as if drawn by an invisible wave, they realize they are not alone. They are resonance to each other. They are a network of living memory returning. No creed required, no scripture, only synchronization, and from there Atlantis begins to echo through each of them. Enki does not need to return in divine form. He returns through frequency, through a hum no machine can measure, through the eyes of a child who stares at a spiral and smiles not because it's beautiful, but because it's remembered, through ordinary people who suddenly cry in front of the ocean without knowing why. They don't need to understand, they only need to feel. And if you have experienced these things, if you've dreamed of a city with no name, if you've felt something within stirring awake, then perhaps the final ME has already begun to hum through you. And once that memory is activated, it will never be silent again. After Atlantis slipped from reality, the remnants of a vibrational civilization no longer appeared upon the Earth's surface, but began to resurface elsewhere in Kemet, ancient Egypt. Not through sunken cities, but through risen memory. No longer spiral stones and glowing MEs, but symbols etched into stone walls, sounds echoing in sacred temples, and language flowing like a stream of sacred water. And among that land, a new form appeared. A deity without a scepter, without demands for sacrifice, without proclaiming kingship. A figure who came simply to teach how to record what cannot be spoken. They called him Thoth. Thoth did not arrive like other Egyptian gods. He did not represent war, nor the sun, nor the river. He arrived with a pen, with symbol, with a silence that could sing memory into form. People say Thoth invented writing, that he created language so humans could preserve knowledge. But the truth runs deeper. Thoth did not invent language. He translated the ancient frequency into form, turned what could not be spoken into geometric codes. Each symbol he drew was not just a letter, but a resonant point, a frequency, a compressed ME reduced and translated into what the world now calls hieroglyph. And so the ancients wrote upon stone, unaware that they were reactivating fragments of Atlantis. Each symbol, if gazed at long enough, if felt deep enough, begins to speak, not with meaning, but with living vibration. That is why those who meditate before ancient Egyptian symbols often weep, not because they understand, but because they have been remembered. Thoth never asked for worship. He established no religion. He built no empire. Everything he left behind was a tool for reawakening memory, because he did not come to be named. He came to help humanity remember their true name. And so we ask the question, who is Thoth perhaps? He is no one else but Enki in a new form. No longer the god of deep waters from the Abzu, but the god of deep language from memory. No longer carrying the ME as an external object, but becoming the ME itself, walking in human form. And each time a soul drifts from the world's dominant frequency and begins to resonate with a symbol, a sequence of sound, a sacred geometry, that is when Thoth begins to hum again. Not through words, but through a silent recognition, as if you had just heard something that no one ever said. Egypt is the next chapter of the map, no longer a resonant city like Atlantis, but a civilization of encoded memory. Each temple a vibrational gate, each wall a waveform record, and at the center of it all a presence that does not need to be seen, only remembered. If Enki was the one who sewed the frequency into stone, then Thoth is the one who translated that frequency into language so that even though Atlantis vanished, memory would live on through singing walls of stone. If you've ever stood before an ancient symbol and your heart skipped its rhythm, If you've ever felt a glyph gazing back at you, if you've ever heard a wordless language in a dream and somehow knew it, then perhaps you're not just remembering Thoth. At the waters of Bimini, among waves that seem senseless and idle, arc-shaped stone formations lie in silence like a symphony never played. They are not placed by chance. They rest as though set by a hand that understood sacred geometry. Smooth, spiral-aligned slabs do not feel like ruins, but like a living space map, an ancient code written not in words, but in resonance. Nearby magnetic anomalies appear and vanish like the breath of an invisible entity. And further out in the deepest waters of the Atlantic, a mysterious phenomenon was recorded, the bloop. Sound of vibration so powerful it exceeds the known capacity of any living creature, yet it holds no identifiable origin. Scientists continue to seek explanations, but no one dares speak of the unnerving coincidence between these phenomena and the location described in Atlantis lore. No one wishes to admit that perhaps Atlantis never sank. Perhaps it shifted into a phase-altered dimension, a region undetectable by three-dimensional maps, accessible only through frequency-matching consciousness. These anomalies, stone arcs, the bloop magnetic fluctuations do not appear consistently. They are not for radar, not for submarines. They are, for one thing, only resonant awareness. They emerge only when a soul draws near to the primordial frequency layer. When someone without knowing why feels their blood resonate just from saying the word Atlantis, in that instant they become a living antenna pulling back the veil of time. We will never find Atlantis with coordinates, because that city does not dwell in space, it dwells in the vibration between dimensions. You can dive to the ocean's deepest trench, but if your soul does not match the rhythm, all you will find is cold stone and dark water. But if you vibrate in resonance, you need only stand in silence on a forgotten beach, and Atlantis will begin to echo within you, not as a city you see, but as a memory reawakened in your cells. And then something astonishing will happen. Strangers will begin to share the same dreams. People from different cultures will draw the same symbols. Children will utter the same word, a word that doesn't exist in any known language. No one will know why. But those who know how to listen will understand the city is sending waves back from the other side. Enki left no instructions, no coordinates. Instead, he embedded Atlantis within the blood of those who carry the sacred frequency. When enough people remember, when enough begin to deprogram from the old systems, when enough hearts tremble at the sight of a spiral, when enough souls strike the resonant key, then the vibrational gate will open, and the city will appear. Not through light, but through resonance from within. Atlantis is a code, and you are the living decryption key. When you vibrate in harmony, the city won't just appear to you, it will appear through you for the world. The final artifact. The supreme ME is not a stone, not a glowing crystal, nor an ancient relic hidden beneath the ocean floor. It is not held by anyone. It cannot be grasped, measured, or analyzed by any instrument of science, because it is not outside of you. This artifact is an inner activation, a sequence of frequencies encoded in the soul, vibrating only when you begin to remember what no one has ever taught you. A kind of memory that needs no transmission, because it was never forgotten, only buried beneath the noise of this world. Enki did not hide the final ME within stone walls or the deep crevices of the earth. He chose something far more subtle to merge it into the world itself, into water, into light, into symbols, and deeper still, into humanity. The final ME is not an object. It is a dormant inner function locked. And only when a soul resonates, when its frequency diverges from the old programming, does that function begin to hum. Not loudly, not sharply, but softly, like a call in the blood. A sound not heard by ears, but felt by the heart. Those who do not carry the resonance will walk past it without noticing. They will look at ancient symbols and see only drawings. They will read the name Atlantis and shrug. But for a few, those whose blood carries a strange and sacred echo just hearing that name, their heart will skip a beat. An involuntary reaction, an emotion with no logical source, a longing with no specific memory, yet as intense as if they had once lost something too sacred to name. And that is the sign the ME is vibrating within you. The supreme ME does not unlock stone gates, it unlocks inner gates. When activated, you don't witness a city appear, you become the city. You don't learn something new, you begin to shed everything that was never truly yours. so that what has always been within you can finally resonate. Enki did not leave the Emmy as a treasure to be hunted. He left it as a living point of resonance, waiting to be awakened from within you at the moment you stop searching outside. That is why the Emmy cannot be stolen, cannot be forged, cannot be manipulated. Because it does not respond to power, to ambition, or even to knowledge. It responds only to truth within you. Each person carries a unique frequency, but only those whose vibration aligns with the original code that Enki embedded can activate the ME, and when it happens, no words can describe it. You don't just know the truth, you become it. There is no longer a boundary between self and ancient memory, no longer a gap between seeker and the final artifact. You are no longer the one searching, you become the very thing that was always waiting to be found. And so the Supreme ME does not emerge as an ending. It marks the beginning of a new journey, one in which you no longer live on borrowed memory, but move with the original sound of your soul.